In the dark shadows, in the white cold, fearlessly we search for knowledge new and old. We drink the strong spirits and read the ancient tomes. The order of the Abracast. We are the brave and the bold. The Abracast. Occult, history, conspiracy, and violence.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Abracast. I apologize for missing, 2 weeks? 2 weeks? I was under the weather, having some problems, so I do apologize for ruining my streak that I was on. And, man, a lot happened while I was away, so we're going to get caught up on a little bit of that. I just wanted to clarify something I said in the last episode, I think, where I was talking... I don't remember why I was talking about this, but, I was talking about this idea of a soft collapse, and I likened it to the first Mad Max movie. And I haven't seen these movies since I was a kid, but I got a little bit of pushback saying that, no, there was a nuclear war, that it wasn't a soft collapse, and I wanted to be like, whoa, okay, well, let's pump the brakes here, and look at the... when the first movie came out, I don't think there was a call out of nuclear war. I believe there was a call out of war and resource scarcity. And when I think of Mad Max, which is Road Warrior, which is the second movie, I don't think there was much nuclear war talk there. I don't think the nuclear war thing came up until the little kids were telling the story of, their history or whatever. I think that is the first time they actually talk about nuclear war. So I wanted to clarify that because I had a little bit of pushback. So anyhow, we're going to be continuing this theme of the soft collapse, here this evening with a few sort of current event stories. And so we're going to get rolling. We got a lot to talk about. I have I lost track of the tabs that we're going to be talking about this evening on my laptop. So, but I do have my vessel of the art here filled with my weapon of mass distraction, the formula for jihad, the Jinn Jihad. All right, let's go. Let's get this fucking party started. So we're going to open with, I thought this would be interesting. We're going to open from an article here, listen, also, you people that are like, come on, get back on track, buddy. We need to talk about conspiracy theories and the occult. Like, listen, I don't need conspiracy theories. I don't need to talk about aliens and JFK assassinations. Look at what fucking is going on and you tell me it's not a conspiracy theory. Okay, so I thought this would be interesting. I found this article in The New Scientist from January 2018. And I thought, wow, well, that's far enough away. That was pre-COVID times. That was a whole different fucking, era in history. So let's talk about, what these guys were writing on January 17th of 2018. The end of days. Is Western civilization on the brink of collapse? History tells us cultures have their sell-by dates. Do political strife crippling inequality and climate change mean the West time is now up. Ah, the good old days, when predictions that the end is nigh were only seen on sandwich boards, and the doom mongers who carried them were easy enough to ignore. Unless you're Rorschach. You can't ignore Rorschach. If only things had stayed so simple, the sandwich boards have mostly gone and the world is still here, and the gloomy predictions keep coming up. Not all of them are based on creative interpretations of religious text. Scientists, historians, and politicians alike have begun to warn that Western culture is reaching a critical juncture. Cycles of inequality and resource use are heading for a tipping point that in many past civilizations precipitated political unrest, war, and final collapse. For the most part, though, people are carrying on as usual, shopping for their next holiday or posing on social media. In fact, many people seem blissfully unaware that collapse might be imminent. Are Westerners doing the modern equivalent of sitting around eating grapes while the barbarians hammer at the doors? And more importantly, does science have any ideas about what's really going on, what might happen next, and how people could turn things around? So I'm going to editorialize here a little bit, and we're also going to be skipping parts of this because besides making fun of it, I don't really care about the inequality portion. And besides making fun of it, I really don't care about the global... Oh, wait. It's not global warming anymore. Climate change. Besides making fun of it, I really don't care what these people think about the climate change emergency. And to kind of tag on the editorializing that I want to do here is talking about breads and circuses. When Rome was collapsing, breads and circuses kept the people distracted. Look around. Back to it. The idea that Western power and influence is in gradual decline, perhaps as a prelude to a precipitous fall, has been around for a while, but has gained new urgency with recent political events, not least the election of U.S. President Donald Trump. We're going to skip through a lot of this Trump business too. For some, his turning away from international commitments is part of fulfilling his promise to make America great again by concentrating on its own interests. For others, it's a dangerous move that threatens to undermine the whole world order. Meanwhile, over the old world, Europe is mired in its own problems. So this is a perspective, like I said, from 2018. But I believe that if you put your reading glasses on and you look at what is going on in Europe, and you look at what's going on here, it's a lot alike. It's almost like we're going through the same thing here that they're going through there. So, is it mired in its own problems? No, we are all mired in the problem. This Democrat versus Republican, left versus right, us versus them mode that we're stuck in it's all bullshit. What we really are looking at is elites, globalists, elites like fucking Klaus Schwab and these fuckers versus the normies, the regular old people out there. So look, why is Europe having the same migration crisis as we're having here? The exact same, maybe even worse. I mean, look at what's going on in Ireland, for fuck's sake. Look what's going on in Paris, and look what's going on in England, in Great Britain. And, I don't want to sound like an alarmist, but the last time I walked into a Walmart, I got culture shock. The people shopping there, the people that worked there, I was like, what the fuck is going on at Walmart? Look at Springfield, Ohio is getting a lot of press right now about they're eating the dogs. They're eating the dogs. Hey, newsflash, they're not. Well, they might actually be eating the dogs, but the reason they're killing the dogs is because they all fucking practice voodoo, okay? That's what Haiti is voodoo people. And we're starting to hear locally in my local vicinity, there's a little town outside of Pittsburgh called Charleroi. Charleroi is a rural area, and their demographics are being shifted on purpose. They just, over the last 3 years or so, just onboarded like fucking, I don't even know what the number is, whatever it is, tons of Haitians. And you see the same thing going on in Charleroi that you see in Springfield, Ohio. Not the dogs thing, but what that is a precursor, a lead up to, which is wild traffic accidents, people being injured in car accidents because I don't know why Haitians can't drive, but looking at the data, you're like, well, these guys can't fucking drive. I don't know if they're being given driver's license or if they're just being able to buy cars. Maybe we're giving them cars. We're going to get to that in this episode too. We're giving an awful lot of money away. So using science, back to it. Hold on. Oh boy, I'm fired. I'm ready to go. You can see 2 weeks without a microphone's driven me a little crazy, perhaps. Using science to predict the future isn't easy. Not because both collapse and Western civilization are difficult to define, like, what is a woman? We talk about the collapse of the Roman Empire in the middle of the first millennium. For example, there's plenty of evidence that empires existed in some form for centuries after, and that its influence lingers today. So we know, when Rome fell, it threw most of the world into the Dark Ages, right? But eventually, it split between Rome and Byzantium. And eventually the church just kind of morphed into the Vatican and morphed into Catholicism. Constantine, all this stuff. I agree with what Philip K. Dick says. The empire never ended. Just fucking look around. Sorry. Again, I'm wound up. So when we talk about collapse, what do we mean? That people lose everything and go back to the fucking Dark Ages? Or that it's going to be socially and politically turbulent for a while. Western civilization is a similarly skip the word, slippery concept. Roughly speaking, it covers parts of the world where the dominant culture norms originated in Western Europe, including North America, Australia, and New Zealand. Beyond that, though, the lines get blurrier. Other civilizations, such as China, were built on different sets of cultural norms, yet thanks to the globalization, defining where Western culture starts and ends is far from easy. And it's just going to keep getting harder because, we're just pumping in immigrants who are not interested in gelling with us. They're interested in bringing their third world shithole countries with them here, which is by design. I postulate. Despite these difficulties, some scientists and historians are analyzing the rise and fall of ancient civilizations to look for patterns that might give us a heads up on what's coming. Now, I don't believe that this article is going to talk about androgyny or hermaphroditism, but let's take a look. Maybe we'll do an episode about the end of Western civilization, the end of Rome, and androgyny and hermaphroditism. I believe that's something that might be worth looking at as we're looking at this formula that's been loaded into our reality seemingly overnight. So is there any evidence that the West is reaching the end game? According to Peter Turchin, an evolutionary anthropologist at the University of Connecticut, there are certainly some worrying signs. Turchin was a population biologist studying boom and bust cycles in predator and prey animals when he realized that the equation he was using could also describe the rise and fall of ancient civilizations. In the 90s, he began to apply these equations to historical data, looking for patterns that link social factors such as wealth and health inequality to political instability. Sure enough, in the past civilizations in ancient Egypt, China, Russia, he spotted two recurring cycles that are linked to regular era-defining periods of unrest. One, a secular cycle. Last 2 or 3 centuries, it starts with a fairly equal society. Then, as the population grows, the supply of labor begins to outstrip demand and so becomes cheap. Wealthy elites form, and while the living standards of the workers fall as society becomes more and more unequal, the cycle enters a more destructive phase in which the misery of the lowest strata of infighting between elites contribute to social turbulence and eventual collapse. Then there's a second shorter cycle lasting 50 years and made up of 2 generations, one peaceful and one turbulent. Look at the U.S. history. Turchin spotted peaks of unrest in 1870, 1920, and 1970. Worse, he predicts that the end of the next 50-year cycle in around 2020 will coincide with the turbulent part of the longer cycle, causing a period of political unrest that is at least on par with what happened around 1970 at the peak of the civil rights movement and protests against the war in Vietnam. This prediction echoes one made in 1997 by 2 amateur historians called William Strauss and Neil Howe. Now, this book that they're talking about is an amazing book. It's an amazing theory. I've often thought about trying to cover it on the show, and we might just do that. Longtime listeners of the show will know when we talk specifically about books, I try to make sure that they're in the public domain or there's no copyright issues. You know, I don't want to get caught up on any kind of this and that and the other thing. Also, I don't want to kind of steal anybody's, work. I always put links to whatever, the books, all this stuff. So this book is relatively new. And the way that I've gotten around this before, especially when I was talking about the boom-bust cycle of the Federal Reserve, is we kind of just did this really long kind of book report on it. Like, I think it was like fucking 12 episodes. And it's when we started looking at... I don't want to say it's a prediction, because literally I was just looking and I'm like, hey, we're printing a lot of money. This is going to cause some inflation. Let's examine that. So you can go back and find those episodes. They're called the Duck Hunt, the Sinister Duck Hunt episodes, something like this. So skipping down, Turchin made predictions in 2010 before the election of Donald Trump. The political infighting that surrounded his election, but has since pointed out that the current levels of inequality and political divisions in the United States are a clear sign that is entering the downward phase of the cycle. Remember, we're talking about what's happening in Europe and Great Britain. Brexit and the Catalan crisis hint at the U.S. is not the only part of the West to feel the strain. It's my understanding that we're all feeling the same strain. Everything that's happening to us is happening in Europe, and it's happening in Great Britain, except for Poland. Poland somehow is getting out of it. You know how? They're not taking any of these immigrants in. They're doing just fine. Their crime rates are just fine. As for what will happen next, Turchin can't say. He points out that his model operates on the level of large-scale forces and can't predict exactly what might tip unease over into unrest and how bad things might get. How and why turbulence sometimes turns into collapse is something that concerns Safa Matareshi, a mathematician at the University of Maryland. He noticed that while in nature some prey always survive to keep the cycle going, some societies that collapsed, such as the Mayas and the Minoans and the Hittites, never recover. We're on borrowed time. To find out why, he first modeled human populations as if they were predators and natural resources were the prey. Then he split the predators into two unequal groups, wealthy elites and the less well-off commoners. This shows that either extreme inequality or resource depletion could push a society to collapse, but the collapse is irreversible only when the two coincide. They essentially fuel each other. Part of the reasons that the haves are buffered by their wealth and the effects of this resource depletion for longer than the have-nots, and so resist calls for a change of strategy until it's too late. Prep. Get your shit, buy your bullets, get your band-aids. My message to you guys for a while now has been, be the first sergeant of your family and get the beans and get the bullets and get the band-aids. Because no one's coming. Fucking no one's coming. And we're going to talk about that. Actually, we're going to just skip through the rest of this because, like I said, we have so much shit to cover. I would suggest you guys read this. The link will be in the show notes. And we're going to move on to more meatier things. So, sit tight. The New York Post. This is from an article published just, 3 days ago. Feds say there's no money left to respond to hurricanes after FEMA spent $1.4 billion on migrants. Homeland Security Advisor Alejandro Mayorkas set off outrage Wednesday when he told reporters that the Federal Emergency Management Agency does not have the funds to see Americans through the rest of the Atlantic hurricane season after the agency spent more than $1.4 billion after the fall of 2022. So whenever we talk about dollars and we get into the billions, I like to just remind everybody that when the term billions came into our language, it was about fucking outer space. It was about stars, not about money, not about dollars. And now it seems like we're throwing billions of dollars at everything, except for Americans. We are meeting the immediate needs with the money that we have, Mayorkas said during a press gaggle on Air Force One en route to tour damage from Hurricane Helene in South and North Carolina. We are expecting another hurricane hitting, he added, but we don't have funds. FEMA doesn't have the funds to make it through the season. And what is imminent? Critics pointed out the Department of Homeland Security allocated $640.9 million this year in FEMA administration funds to aid local governments coping with the influx of asylum seekers. Although Mayorkas once fired back late Thursday, insisting that those funds couldn't be used for hurricane relief because Congress authorized them specifically for the migrant crisis. What? This is easy. Mayorkas and FEMA immediately stopped spending on money on illegal immigration, resettlement, and redirect those funds to areas hit by the hurricane. Put Americans first. Texas Republican Greg Abbott tweeted Wednesday in response to DHS chief. Yeah, agreed Elon Musk, the billionaire owner of X and CEO of Tesla and SpaceX. Abbott, top critic of Mayorkas mass parole of asylum seekers into the U.S. after President Biden repudiated former President Donald Trump his remain in Mexico policy, with the governor busing migrants to Democrat-led jurisdictions such as New York City, forcing local budget cuts to house them. Over 2 years, more than $1.4 billion has been committed from FEMA administration programs to support non-federal entities that are taking care of migrants. The DHS allocated $78 million for the migrant crisis last year, initially through the FEMA Emergency Food and Shelter Program, which funds relief not associated with natural disasters, but then through new FEMA shelter and service programs, which was authorized in late 2022 by Congress responding to the migrant crisis. So, you know, what the New York Post here is declining to say in this report is the migrant crisis is manufactured. Someone got into office and opened the fucking door. Literally. They got into office and they said, hey, come on down. You're the next contestant on The Price is Right. We have $1.4 billion for you. Just come on in. We'll throw you up in some hotels. We'll give you some phones and maybe some cars. We'll illegally fly you all over the country and deposit you in, probably red districts, people that vote for Republicans. We'll just plant you right in their backyard, right in their communities. And you can voodoo sacrifice all the dogs and all the cats you want, and then put them on the grill afterwards and, you know, wreck a bunch of people with cars. These claims are completely false, DHS said in a statement Thursday to Fox News following the Republican outcry. As Secretary Mayorkas said, FEMA has the necessary resources to meet the immediate needs associated with Hurricane Helene and other disasters. The shelter and service program is a completely separate and appropriated grant program that was authorized and funded by Congress and is not associated in any way with FEMA disaster-related authorities or funding streams. It's unclear that federal officials have the power to redirect migrant-focused funds to natural disaster victims. The original program from which migrant funds flowed aimed to alleviate homelessness, with 1983 legislation setting up the Emergency Food and Shelter Program and calling projects and activities in civil jurisdictions with high unemployment or in labor surplus areas or in local units or in pockets of poverty. The December 2022 funding bill authorizing the split-off program for spending on migrants vaguely described the purpose as for, quote, providing shelter and other services to families and individuals encountered by the Department of Homeland Security, unquote. Relatively paltry $4 million has been paid directly to families and individuals in the week since Hurricane Helene ravaged the Southeast, killing at least 202 people. That number's gone up since this was written a few days ago. People are causing severe flooding damage from Florida to North Carolina. White House Press Secretary KJP said Thursday. Those funds are from a $10 million FEMA allocation that allows storm victims grants of $750 for groceries. So let's think about that. Where are the checks going to go? What grocery stores are there? The whole fucking the whole area's been wiped out. Biden said Wednesday during an operational briefing on Hurricane Helene in North Carolina that it's going to cost billions of dollars to deal with this storm and all the communities affected, and Congress has an obligation to ensure that states have the resources they need. When he was asked about the storm, he actually looked at the camera with his mouth open for a couple seconds and was like, "What storm?" You can find it. Look it up. And then afterwards he said, "Yeah, everyone's getting everything they need. Don't worry about it. It's going to be great." The lack of available FEMA funds has stoked outrage among congressional Republicans who are not due back until session until after Election Day. The Biden-Harris administration took more than $1 billion tax dollars that has been allocated to FEMA for disaster relief and used it on housing illegal aliens. That's Jim Jordan. Now they've abandoned the American hurricane victims in North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, and Tennessee. Representative Tim Burchett, whose district neighbors the disaster zone, retweeted FEMA spending over $1 billion on illegals while they leave Americans stranded and without help is treasonous. U.S. citizens are dying. Pray for our country, folks. These pictures they're amazing. The pictures of these is amazing. Representative Eli Crane, the Biden-Harris FEMA spent over $1 billion on funding these illegal aliens. America last. Connect the dots if you can, wrote Tim Murtaugh, an advisor to former President Orange Man campaign. The DHS says FEMA might not have enough cash to help people through hurricane season, but in 2 years of a new Biden-Harris program, they spent $1 billion on housing and other services for migrants. FEMA did not immediately respond to the Post's request for comment. FEMA also did not respond in any meaningful way to the disaster zone. I was joking a couple episodes ago. I don't think it was the last episode, but I was like, are they just trying to convince us that we don't even need a president? Because Biden was like on vacation for a month or something. And I really think that might be part of this. Like, no one knows where he's at. There's pictures floating around of the Oval Office being empty. He's been on vacation eating ice cream or whatever. And, everybody else is running around sending helicopters down there to fucking get people. If I could get through some more of this shit, like, that's how we're going to be ending the episode. We got a lot to talk about regarding the federal government impeding people from everyday citizens from saving people. It's fucking crazy. I kind of did like a little spoiler here because I don't know if I'm going to make it. We're not moving through these things fast enough. So, justthenews.com, bombshell report. High-risk non-citizens without IDs flying across the U.S. The OIG has repeatedly published reports identifying potential national security risks by Biden-Harris policies identified within DHS and its sub-agencies. 23 years after Islamic terrorists used airplanes to conduct the worst terror attack on U.S. soil, the federal agency created to protect Americans from national security threats, quote, cannot ensure that they are keeping high-risk non-citizens without identification from entering the country, unquote. The potentially high-risk non-citizens are being flown on domestic flights without ID, creating a public safety risk, according to the latest Office of Inspector General report assessing several federal agencies within the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. What the fuck is going on? The OIG has reportedly published reports identifying potential national security risks created by you-know-who, Biden-Harris policies identified within DHS and its sub-agencies. In the latest redacted report that has, quote, sensitive security information, unquote, the OIG expressed concerns about Americans' public safety to the administration and Transportation Security Administration, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, and the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The report states that agencies didn't assess risks to public safety by releasing non-citizens in the United States without identification and putting them on domestic flights. The OIG requested data on a number of non-citizens without identifications who were released in the United States from fiscal years 2021 through 2023. Because immigration officers are not required to document whether non-citizens presented identification in the database, the data of the OIG obtained, quote, may be incomplete, unquote. Therefore, neither CBP or ICE could determine how many of the millions of non-citizens seeking entry into the United States each year entered without identification and whose self-reported biographic information was accepted. The report states the CBP and ICE offers interviewed by the OIG acknowledged the risks of allowing non-citizens without identification into the country, yet neither CBP nor ICE conducted a comprehensive risk assessment on these non-citizens to access the level of risk these individuals present and develop corresponding mitigation measures. One of our primary responsibilities of CBP and ICE is to verify non-citizens' identities prior to seeking entry. TSA is responsible for screening everyone who boards domestic flights. The OIG audited them to determine to what extent CBP and ICE policies and procedures confirmed individuals' identities for the documents TSA accepts for domestic travel, and whether TSA ensures non-citizens traveling on domestic flights provide proof of identification consistent with all other domestic travelers. As Border Patrol officials have explained, the majority of illegal border crossers are not vetted and released with DHS papers. The OIG confirms this, stating that CBP and ICE officers accept self-reported biographical information, which they use to verify various immigration forms. Once in the United States, non-citizens can travel on domestic flights. Hey buddy, you, the one that's sitting there listening to me while you're in study hall or whatever, you try to get on a fucking plane without an ID and see what fucking happens to you. It's gonna be like a fucking P. Diddy party for you by the time they're done. Oh my god, I cracked myself up. Hang tight, we'll be back. We're moving ahead. Sorry about that. Back to the New York Post. Word games can't conceal the third world truth about open borders. Politically incorrect. Words don't kill, but Venezuelan gangs do. This is the fucking New York Post. Donald Trump this week warned rallygoers in small Wisconsin community that if Kamala is reelected, your town and every town will be transformed into a third world hellhole. Okay, first of all, this is a professional writer in one of the biggest newspapers in probably the world. Kamala Harris isn't getting reelected. She's a vice president. She's possibly getting elected to become the president. So, whatever. I guess that might have been Donald Trump's error to whatever. I'm nitpicking. He has repeatedly said that Biden-Harris's open borders are turning New York into a third world nation and America into a third world disaster. And the rhetoric makes the left-wing elites apoplectic. Never mind the violence perpetrated by migrant gangs and societal disorder caused by open borders. The problem is with the words. NPR says the term third world is offensive. Well, I apologize. Foreign policy columnist Howard French calls it utterly racist rhetoric. Okay. It is an intentional distraction. Okay, people watching. Okay, Howard. People watching. Have you ever seen someone shit in a Walmart parking lot? What else do you call it? Watching people in their neighborhoods being degraded, what they say are seeing with their own eyes. They have no problem calling the conditions as they see them. We got a third world country here now in New York City with third world crime. Says Republican New York City Councilwoman Vicky Palladino. She estimates that 60% of the arrests in Queens district involve what she calls illegal aliens. Queens resident Ramses Ferris, a former Democrat and current Republican, claiming that commercial streets have become third world markets, while illegal vendors hawking stolen merchandise and half-naked sex workers strutting in plain sight of children walking to school. Roosevelt Avenue is so overrun with recent arrived hookers that it's been dubbed the market of sweethearts by American copy of Bangkok's sordid Patapong market. The Trump campaign got backlash. I don't know. Import the third world, become the third world. The NAACP responded sharply. They are showing us all how racist they are. No, Bedlam is being imported to the area around the hotel, once a Manhattan landmark. Businesses are fleeing. Migrants pictured are mostly black, but commuters of all races dread walking past the chaos to get to Grand Central Station. Trump was tagged a racist. Oh my God. No one's ever called him that before. Just this month right here in this beautiful town, Trump said, police arresting illegal aliens, a member of the savage Venezuelan prison gang known as TDA, are holding a woman and her daughter against their will and sexually assaulting them again and again and again. Trump called the alleged assailant an animal. Not, it should be noted, all migrants. When he used the same word in April to describe a Venezuelan illegal immigrant who raped, bludgeoned, and killed Georgia nursing student Laken Riley, Reuters accused Trump of wrongdoing for resorting to degrading rhetoric he has employed time and time again. I mean, I'm flabbergasted. I don't. What are you talking about? Oh my Lord. All right, we're going to move to flood. We're going to move to hurricane stuff because these items are linked now via Mayorkas. He said we don't have the money to take care of the hurricane stuff, because we sent $1.4 billion to a bunch of illegal immigrants. So now we're going to be talking about what the government is doing to stop people from helping people. And I'm not even going to be talking about like the TEMA, the Tennessee Emergency Management Agency. There's rumors that they're confiscating food pantries like at churches and stuff to take them to redistribute them, which besides being unethical is just, it's evil. It's evil. But like I said, those are rumors. I'm not in the fucking news business, so I'm not calling anyone to figure it out. Whatever. So again, this is not a conspiracy theory. We don't need quote, conspiracy theory, unquote. Like, we don't need to talk about Roswell right now, because we're going to be talking about a situation where people in the highest levels of government are stopping citizens from going out and rescuing their neighbors. I mean, I got to stop just babbling about it and get to the article, right? Pilot flying Helene rescue missions in North Carolina threatened with arrest. Lake Lure, North Carolina. This is the Hill, by the way. Jordan Sidehome woke up Saturday morning. He saw a Facebook post that tens of thousands of people were commenting and sharing. A family was stranded on a mountain in Banner Elk, North Carolina. They had run out of water a day earlier and had just enough food to last less than 2 days. Seedholm, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. It's a weird name. The former head of the Chesterfield County Sheriff's Office Narcotics Unit knows a thing or two about finding people, and he researched the mountain chain where the family was located, and he found a place to land using his mapping software. He loaded bottled water and food into his helicopter and headed towards Banner Elk. I thought, hey, man, I have a helicopter. Maybe I can help. It's amazing. This is an amazing, I don't know, hero. This guy's a hero. His son, a high school junior, went along. Both are volunteer members of the Sandhills Volunteer Fire Department in Pageland, South Carolina. Seedham is a Class 1 certified law enforcement officer and a pilot with nearly 1,400 flight hours. He first contacted the Charlotte Douglas International Airport's air traffic control tower to get clearance to fly over the airport. He said he got clearance and was allowed to fly over the airport, which is a direct shot to the gap of the mountains he needed to get through to Lake Lure. Once in Lake Lure area, Saturday, Sidehome landed at the nearest airport and met with multiple law enforcement officers, first responders, to coordinate communication channels with them and to find out what was needed and where he should go to help. He said he left the supplies he collected at a drop-off point for the family. He lifted off towards Black Mountain to find where he could help. The first rescue was of 2 women stranded high up on the mountain. Seedham took the pair who didn't have water or food to a community center with supplies and generator power. Oh, that's a nice looking bird. There's a picture of this guy's helicopter. It's pretty sweet looking. It's like fucking, I've only been on a helicopter a couple times. UH-60 Blackhawks, baby. It's the way to go. But when I was in the Army in Germany, I lived next to a airfield. All night, fucking Chinooks coming in. When the father and son reached Lake Lure, they saw a bloated, broad river and the damage the raging floodwaters did to homes along it. The water had ripped through a small Carolina mountain town, taking life and property with it. Jeez, they have a picture of this. It's wild. They took this photograph of Lake Lure Saturday. Oh my God. After getting 4 victims to safety Saturday, Sidehome said he and his son slept in recliners in a pilot lounge at a nearby airport and awoke Sunday morning with a decision to make. Jordan and Landon Seedholm were inundated with social media, phone calls, and text messages from people pleading for help. Most of the voicemails were from family members who got the elder Sidehom's phone number from Facebook. My parents are stuck there, a woman's voice said in an email. She hadn't heard from her parents in more than a day, and her voice nearly broke as she slowly read her parents' number into the phone. If you receive this, please give me a call back. Thank you. I can hear the desperation in her voice. This is multiple phone calls I've received like this, voicemails, text messages. You can hear people desperate for help. Sidehome told WJZY, person they were coordinating with on the ground had said Sidehome dozens of addresses where people were either missing or stranded. I spoke with my son, who is my co-pilot, and I said, hey, do you want to go back out and try to help these today? And his response was, there are so many messages, I don't think we can't not go help. He's an amazing young man. They got back into the Black Robinson 44 helicopter and headed west once again through the mountain gap in Lake Lure. As we were flying by, my son actually spotted a lady waving for help. And I asked him, I said, hey, she's waving for help or she just waving? And he said, no, I think she's waving for help. Saidom and his son conducted a low and high recon for power lines and trees that might have been in the way, then gingerly lowered his chopper onto what was left of the couple's concrete driveway. The flood waters had washed away most of the ground beneath it. Saidom's video shows him leaving the helicopter to greet the couple and then returning with the game plan. A few seconds later, the audio and the recording captured the exchange between the father and son. Hey, I want you to let me get in. You step out. You go out. You help her. Put the bag in back. Get her strapped in. And I'm going to take her down. Come back and I'll take him. I'll come back and then I'll get you. Okay. And the elder Saidom told his son. Saidom said the main concern was putting too much weight on the driveway because it was crumbling. He left his son and the woman's husband to make the 3-minute flight to a group of first responders positioned along the river below the mountain. After he and his son loaded the woman into the chopper, Saidom said his son to stay put and he'll be right back to get the husband. I originally left my son, a co-pilot, on the side of the mountain. It was kind of unstable, so I didn't want to put more weight on the helicopter to lift back up. So I left my son with the other victim and was just going to take this person down one at a time. Saidom landed in the parking lot of a boys' camp road and Memorial Hospital near Lake Lure Flowering Bridge, where he said he spotted a group of first responders gathering. Once we landed where the emergency personnel were, I was met by a fire chief or maybe a captain, and he asked me who I was, and I told him I was just out. I was a local volunteer. The man was from out of state fire department who traveled to North Carolina to help with rescue efforts. I believe the chief was from somewhere in Michigan, and I told him my background, my experience, my law enforcement, firefighting, and pilot, and he immediately started helping with coordination. He gave me radio frequencies to coordinate with them on, set up landing areas for me, and so forth. I'm going to skip ahead to try to get to the point of this whole thing. All right, so he's talking to this chief from Michigan. I told him my background, experience, law enforcement, and in the middle of the whole conversation and them blocking the road off, I was greeted by, at the time I didn't know, but the Lake Lure fire chief or assistant chief maybe, and he shut down the whole operation. Saidom later positively identified the Lake Lure fire official via the town's website, but WJZY has decided not to name the official at this time. The station called, texted, and emailed the town, including the fire department leadership, the mayor, to get the message to the official. Lake Lure's official government Facebook page confirmed late Monday that the fire official Saidom identified as the person who threatened him with arrest had received the station's request for comment and that the town's email was down. As of this posting, no one from the town responded, including the mayor, who was included in the request for interviews. The back and forth between Saidom and the fire official continued right in front of the woman Saidom had just plucked off the mountain, and he said he originally asked me who I was, and I gave him the same information, who I was, the background and the experience, law enforcement, firefighting, and his response was, if you have that kind of experience, you should know that you should be coordinating with us. And I said, I have been coordinating with everybody, as I've been here just a day before speaking with local law enforcement and rescue personnel. Saidom said that he tried to de-escalate and asked the official for instructions on how to communicate with the Lake Lure Fire Department while he was flying a rescue mission near the town. And Saidom said that the fire officials ordered him to leave and not come back. And if that's what you want us to do, we'll leave. No issue. I've explained to him that I left my son on the side of the mountain with another victim, and I was going to go back and bring them, and it was already set up for the landing spot and how I would get into the area. And he told me I wasn't going to go back up that mountain and get them. I was going to leave them there. Saidom said that the official asked for a specific reason. He was ordering him to stop rescuing efforts. He said, "You're interfering with my operation." Is the reason that Seidel said the officials gave. I'm going back and getting my co-pilot, he said. If you turn around and go back up that mountain, you're going to be arrested. And I said, well, sir, I'm going back to get my co-pilot. I don't know what to tell you. Seidel said the official called over the law enforcement officers and again threatened him with arrest if he flew back up the mountain. At that point, I had to make a decision. I have a victim and my son, and I politely asked the officers. I told them the situation again and explained everything, told them who I had been coordinating with, and said, hey, if I go back up to get this victim and bring him back to this landing spot the other emergency personnel have designated, am I going to get arrested? And the officer's response was, man, I really don't know what to do in this situation. I relate to that so much right now. I said, so can you tell me if I'm going to get arrested or not? And he said, I'm not sure what to do. Classic cops. Classic. The out-of-state chief and fire captain Seidel said he encountered at the landing zone, spoke with him before he took off. They came back over and they said, hey man, we can't tell you to go and get your victim. We can't even ask you to go get the victim, but we can tell you that if you come back with the victim, we'll have you designate a designated landing spot and we'll make sure they don't come over here. Amazing. All right, last one. Hang tight. We got one more. It's called Mayor Pete orders citizens to stop using drones to find stranded victims as feds fumble hurricane response. They're talking about Mayor Pete Buttigieg, who is the Secretary of Transportation. Somehow. How do you get that job? He was a mayor of some fucking place in Indiana. Candace Hathaway, October 3rd, 2024. Georgia Governor Kemp relief group slams Biden-Harris administration lackluster disaster response to Hurricane Helene. United States Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg, the former mayor of South Bend, Indiana, announced on Wednesday temporary flight restrictions near or around rescue and recovery efforts for Hurricane Helene. Buttigieg stated, our goal is to make sure that funding is no obstacle to very quickly get people the relief that they need and that they deserve. There's also some safety issues that have come up. He said, for example, temporary flight restrictions to make sure that the airspace is clear for any flights or drone activities that might be involved in helping to allow emergency responders to do their job. Transportation Department posted a video of Buttigieg's comments, adding, drone pilots do not fly your drone near or around rescue or recovery efforts for Hurricane Helene, interfering with emergency response operations, impact search and rescue operations on the ground. During a Wednesday press briefing, Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas claimed that the federal government lacks the funds to fully respond to such disasters. We are meeting the immediate needs with the money that we have. We are expecting another hurricane hitting. We do not have the funds, Mayorkas remarked. America First legal report that the Biden-Harris administration's Federal Emergency Management Agency blew a significant portion on funding of illegal immigrants. The Biden-Harris FEMA spent, skipping down, Georgia Governor Brian Kemp torched the administration for its lackluster efforts to help Americans, particularly those living in rural areas. Kemp told WRWD when the first emergency declaration came down, it was only 11 counties in that. A lot of people were outraged, including me, because there was such a devastation in up to 90 counties. So he called the White House. We spoke to the president's chief of staff, the FEMA administrator, and said, look, you're sending the signal that you are not paying attention to some of these rural communities. He continued. At least 200 people have been confirmed dead. It was a massive storm. We're dealing with things statewide. Even the metro Atlanta area recorded flooding. We had mudslides. We had to evacuate people below lakes and ponds in the northeast part of the state. So we've been dealing with it, Kemp told the news outlet. Tim Kennedy, co-founder of Save Our Allies, recently told Fox Business that FEMA is getting in the way of his team's rescue efforts. There's a federal... Where is the federal response and the plan? Kennedy questioned. When asked whether FEMA was on the ground, he responded, I mean, they're present, they're in a way, they're directly interrupting our ability to conduct missions and operations. Kennedy explained that he attempted to place a couple of people in a hotel earlier this week, but he was unable to do so because federal employees had booked all of the rooms. This is a biblical level devastation. This is apocalyptic. The things we see out there, he added. On Thursday, Blaze News' Julio Rosas joined Representative Corey Mills in Swannanoa, North Carolina. Rosas noted that a couple of veterans and locals had band together to provide relief in those in need, making deliveries with civilian helicopters, UTAs, ATVs. When I asked about the federal response, the guy said, "What response?" When asked about his impressions of the federal government's response to the disaster, Mills told Rosas it's obvious that FEMA has continued to drop the ball. Mills explained that FEMA used to focus on providing disaster relief, but has since been recruited to handle the mass illegal immigration crisis. They're peeling off $900 million plus that's going towards migration resettlement, which outside of what their actual scope should be. He credited Americans for coming together to help one another, saying the federal government has adopted an America Last agenda that we have to change. And that's it, everybody. Good night. I'm going home. Remember, be the first sergeant of your family. You people that are listening, find out who the vets are in your community and become friends with them. It's the only it's what's going to be left. It's what's going to be left. I'm John Towers. This is the Abracast. See you next week.
Are you interested in the occult, history, conspiracy, and violence? Learn more at Abracast.com and visit the storefront for tarot cards, merch, and books.
Support the show.
Get access to the show archive
at subscribestar.com. Thank you for listening to this episode. Send an email or visit us on social media to let us know what you think about this topic. And please remember to leave a 5-star rate and review.
Remember, it's not all about wizards and blowjobs.